Hey, it's James, the Judge Master of the podcast, what you're listening to. Anyway, we're going to be live at MCM Comic-Con London this October from the 25th to the 27th. We've got a creator stand in the Creator Pavilion where you can meet the crew and you can get your hands on some exclusive booty, including our gold-ish inspiration tokens. And we're also going to be live performing an exclusive one-shot performance on the creator stage on Saturday the 26th at MCM Comic-Con London from 3:35 until 5 p.m. So, really important, get yourself some tickets if you haven't done already. It's at the Excel Centre in London. I'm sure you're going to have an amazing time when you're there. And there's going to be a very special announcement. Yeah. So, make sure you get your tickets and come and see Roll Britannia at MCM Comic-Con London.
I just MailChimped my marketing.
You MailChimped your what?
I MailChimped my marketing with AI to create an effective marketing campaign in minutes.
No, MailChimp and Way.
Yes, MailChimp in Way. Now I can hyper-personalize my campaigns across email and SMS.
You can do all that with MailChimp?
What did I just MailChimp and say?
MailChimp your marketing with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-ons. Visit MailChimp.com.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, you know, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hello and welcome back to Roll Britannia Parley. I'm Tom and I of course play Keth Frostine. As you know, in this series we step away from our usual misadventures, and instead we talk to other podcasters, celebrities and members of the TTRPG community. Each episode we have a special guest who could be a lifelong player, a fellow podcaster, a movie maker, or someone who has helped to shape Dungeons & Dragons into the game that we love today. In this episode, we managed to talk to a very special guest who lives very far away. They are the creative mind behind one of the most exciting and fastest growing D&D podcasts out there at the moment. They are, of course, the wonder from down under, Cory, the Dungeon Master from Girls Who Don't DnD. So, joining me now is James, Alex, Chip and Paul. Chaps, how are we doing?
Hello. Not bad at all. Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Banter, talk over each other and noise. Sorry.
You've read
Hi,
my
Tom.
show notes.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you? No one ever
great.
asks.
Yeah, how are you, Tom?
I'm well.
Yeah, how are you, Tom?
All the
You
better
okay?
for hearing you.
Good.
All of y'all.
God, don't go on about it.
Oh,
Just silver tongued.
James is clearly on a schedule. But we're not going to talk about James or Paul or Chip. We're going to talk about Alex. Because you took the hot seat for this, and it was a brilliant interview. How did you find it?
well, I've since moved house, so I've changed hot seats, and I'm having to remain perfectly still because there is a tiny puppy on my lap. So
your seat's even hotter.
Well, my lap
Definite
is quite
shout
warm.
out to Earl.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really, really
His
lovely
name is
chat.
Earl.
His name is Earl. Earl Cocoa Bean Troman. Because he's a
Aw.
little cocoa bean. Anyway, what were you saying about tangents before we started recording?
Yeah, something
It's
like
all right,
definitely
you've
making sure we go
fallen
off on
into the
one.
trap of tangents.
I had to learn
Yeah,
all
so-
about the tangents of various triangles
Where did you learn
at
about
GCSE
it?
maths. My school.
I went
Look
to
what
a
you've
Back
done.
when I
cycle.
was a wee nipper growing up in secondary school, you know.
Stop him.
I had to learn all about the
So
Stop
it was a
it
really
now.
lovely
News.
chat. Cory's
Who's
a
got
really
the
nice
dungeon master handbrake?
Yeah, I know, right?
I'll drive round now. Turn it down.
Save us, Tom!
Alex, go.
Yeah. So, yeah, Cory's really lovely. He's a really nice bloke. And if we hadn't been on opposite sides of the world and across various different time zones, we'd probably have talked for quite a few hours if our schedule had allowed. I thought from kind of the interview, what was particularly interesting for me was his touching on his previous production experience, which I know that a lot of us have kind of touched on. Those of us that had done stuff before this podcast, and also the experience that we've gained since. And I think the way that they enhance their show is very similar to the way that James enhances our show in the edit. And we've kind of learned to record, with backing sound and stuff like that to really make it super immersive. And I just really love the idea that, he started Girls Who Don't D&D as a thing that his son could listen to, which begs the question, would those of us that have children, would you ever let your children listen to our madness?
Well, I am led to believe that's what the
much
E
older.
stands for in our show.
The E?
Educational.
Plus, you have to remember that Paul's already had his children in the show.
In the show. Yeah.
So-
They've been in the show,
Yeah.
yeah.
They never listen to it.
They're not allowed to hear their parts ever.
No.
When they're much older,
The wedding gifts.
Paul, being the elderly man that he will be,
Oh, dear.
hands them
He's going to be,
a USB stick, and they don't have a clue what
they're
it
going to
is.
go, what is this?
I've got nowhere to plug this
When
in.
I was young, when I was just
Put
an
this into the
old
back of my
man.
head now.
And play a projection out my eyes.
Let me know when you hear the fart. There we go. Because that is in there. That's immortalised forever.
Yeah.
So,
Tangents aside, can we watch this thing now?
We certainly can, because I really want to, and I'm sure you out there, you want to listen to it as well. You wonderful listener, you. So sit back, relax, as we press play on Alex's wonderful interview with Girls Who Don't D&D. Chip.
Play.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Roll Britannia Parley, the show where we here at Roll Britannia have a chance to chat to all sorts of lovely TTRPG folks from all over the place. Joining us this week is a member of a monthly actual play D&D podcast that's taking the internet by storm with an avid social media following and a thriving Patreon community. It is, of course, Cory from the other side of the world, from Girls Who Don't Play D&D. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Oh, great, mate. It's a lovely, balmy evening over here. Like it's the night, and it's still warm. I'm still feeling awfully shitty in the face, and tomorrow's gonna be worse. So it's actually the nicest it's gonna be for a couple of days.
It is severe weather warning here, and 19-mile-an-hour winds and frosty rain
I
in
think
the
you
morning.
pretty much just expect that from now on
Oh,
until
yeah.
the end of the days. It's just no matter who you talk to, because we talk to people being Australian-based, we have to talk to people from all over the world. Because I don't know, it's almost like Australia doesn't have a podcast community. We do, but it's clearly going to be smaller.
Sure.
People find us from all over the world, and you have to organize different things at different time zones and everything. And almost every time we're talking to someone, we're like, how is it for you at the moment? They're like, it's a cyclone. My house, it's Wizard of Oz. And you're like, oh, that's great. It's
My
40
house is
plus
spinning
degrees here,
around.
the neighborhood's on fire. Yeah.
Oh, God.
You almost don't get anybody going, look, it's just a beautiful spring. It's been spring for 6 months now.
Is it really like spring for that long?
No. I think it's these days spring is almost gone. I mean,
really?
it's almost like we only have the two, the two seasons.
Oh,
We've got these little windows. I love spring.
a little
And
little
It's
glimpse.
just, yeah, we go from, oh, look, I don't know, cold in Australia is not really cold by international standards, but we go from, geez, that's uncomfortably cold in the morning and all that sort of stuff. And then we get spring for 4 days. That's like a lovely 20s. And then something goes, hi, it's 40 today. And you think, oh, that didn't take long. And, I walk from my
Yeah.
yard to the ground and just watch things die.
Oh, no.
Well, that was my favorite tree until today.
Yeah, we watch things suddenly spring up because of the just sheer amounts of rain and wind and all that stuff that we get. But thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all.
So, Girls Who Don't D&D, your podcast started in August 2021, is that correct?
That's when we first posted our first episode.
Right. So
The plan was a year earlier.
Oh,
Strangely.
really?
Yeah, but I was still working with the girls at the time,
Hmm.
and I was about to leave, and they wanted to stay in contact, and they wanted to go out drinking, and I was like, I'm an old man, and it's weird for a man who is married in particular to go out with 3 much younger women, and go drinking. But I do have a bar downstairs. Let's play some board games, and sort of we started off, and I wanted to record them for my son to hear one day.
Oh, really?
When I'm long gone, I guess, and so we'd have something. So yeah, the August date there is just when we first pressed publish on
Right. Okay.
episodes, and then about 3 days later we went into COVID shutdown.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Oh, apologies. That's an alarm. Yeah. Because we started in the middle of COVID. Because we literally had nothing else to do. I was the only one that played D&D before, so I think it's quite interesting that there's similar timing. So what you mentioned that you wanted to kind of record them for your son to hear. What kind of inspired you to start the podcast and kind of enter the world of Dungeons and Dragons? Had you been a D&D fan before?
Yeah, I started way back in with the Red Box days. But I was a player initially. But I was one of those. I guess not many people have this sort of thing, but I was one of those people who watched someone else DM and went, "Oh, I'd like to do that." Normally people,
right, yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to be the storyteller, but I didn't do it. So I played a little bit when this is way back at school, and then it was in the background. I don't know if it's a thing where once you play D&D, you've always played D&D, and so
Sure.
it's always there somewhere. So years and years and years later, I got a chance to DM for a few friends. By then, I'd worked in television and radio for a while, and I didn't work in it anymore. But I stole every idea I could. So I was
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'd been in event management at that time. So it's an event. So I was like, this group of people in particular, I was like, there's going to be sound effects, and we're going to project something on the table, and we had a great time. And then D&D did what D&D does, and the scheduling stopped working. And you start with 7 players, and then 5, and then you're like, no, we're back to 7 this week because and it was hard.
2 of them don't turn up because they didn't tell you that they weren't going to turn up. Yeah,
and everyone really, really wanted to play, but it was getting to be like it's been 2.5 months. I forgot what the story was about. So finding it's always hard.
I fell into a kind of a similar thing. So I started playing D&D, but as a DM. Because I was the only one that kind of knew about D&D. So I was sort of the DM for my uni group, and I remember a really disastrous session with about 9 players, all drinking really, really heavily, and being just like, I don't know, this happens, then that happens, whatever. So yeah, it and then all of them obviously dropped off. So it's very common among D&D groups, I think.
It's difficult. We all say the scheduling is a nightmare, and I think the benefit of this being a session we started with 3 people who'd never played before, I really planned, and I did. I planned 10 sessions. I said, give me 10, because then I get to have the story for my son.
Sure.
And at the end of the first session, the girls were like, no, keep going. And this is great. We want to keep going. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't just happen. There's a whole lot of me thinking at the time. And they're like, how do you come up with these things? Because there's a piece of paper right now that says this might happen, or a piece of paper over here that says consider this. And in my head, there were 400 other options, and I'm just winging it and hoping that the prayer, gets answered. And but they were like, no, let's just keep playing, which is great. But then the whole storyline had to change because they didn't go from. It went from no, we're not doing a 10 session arc. We want to do this all the time. I'm like, that's not as easy as you think it is, but
sure, yeah.
So yeah, we're in. And that was just playing. We hadn't even put together an episode, and it really is a lot of people think that it's not an actual play session because what it gets turned into with the effects and the voiceovers and all sorts of other stuff sounds like there's
a show. Yeah, absolutely is a show. Yeah, I was really impressed with the production quality. Yeah. And so how long?
We're recording in a garage, so it's hard. You get a little bit of reverb sometimes, whatever.
Well, we end up going away for basically with our sort of Patreon community and the wonderful support that they provide. We go away to various Airbnbs to do our recording. So our audio quality also kind of changes throughout the thing. based on the environment. But so how long had you been playing before you published the first episode? Then how long did you guys as a group?
The remarkable thing is I was a DM for about 7 or 8 sessions, and then I wasn't for years. So I played when I was at school. Many years have passed since then. I DM for 8 sessions. That ends up falling over, and then we decide to record them and go from there. So people really do get to hear me being a session 9 session DM.
Right.
But with some storytelling, hopefully, in my background. The trick was, and one of the things I learned from television is often what you're doing is hiding your weaknesses. And editing was always about hiding your weaknesses in television, which was what I mainly did. So you're always like going, oh, that's no good. Just get rid of that. That never existed. So we early on knew the power of that edit was that the excessive amount of time it takes to count your dice when you've never played before, and we've left some of this stuff in, but the first time someone says, which one's the D8? And you're like, oh, it's the one with 8. And you go, yeah, but what's it look like? And you go, it looks almost exactly like the D10, but you have to know. And you go, which one's a D10? Oh, it's got a 0 on it because we don't do 10s. And everything's going wrong. You got to cut that out. But it's real. That's what D&D is. And, one of the girls at one stage, it's a fairly famous quote among our community is when she says, I go, like, just pick up the D6. She goes, just call it the normal fucking dice. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I got too far into the world.
Yeah, I think we've got the pyramid one, the one that looks like a Sims diamond, the normal dice, and then the one that you use for everything, pretty much. Yeah,
it's pretty much it. Why have they got all these extra dice when I'm only ever using the D20? Look, we started. So what most people have heard is everything. Pretty much that I've done. The vast majority of everything that I've DM'd is out there in the world.
That's really cool.
People to criticize, and for the girls, it's absolutely everything they've ever done.
Yeah, which is there's quite a lot of bravery in that, I find. Like, I'd played a little bit, but I'd obviously never played to this extent. This is definitely the longest campaign I've ever had in our show. So I know what it feels like to be in that kind of creative space and also learning and putting it out to the world. I think is really impressive.
It's great. It's a trust thing. We were fortunate enough to, as I was their benevolent leader when I was their boss. So they developed some trust with me before I left, so that I was able to factor that in. And we did all the things like we didn't do a session 0 precisely. We did a survey, but session 0 in many ways is how long you've known somebody, and I know this person. But also we asked them questions. When I say I sent out a survey which was meant to be fun, but was secretly a session 0, and it just had a bunch of these questions in there that
What kind of questions did you include then?
I asked for childhood memories. And so you got back things that people liked, and you went, okay, I can use that in some way.
As in, like, childhood memories from them as people or from characters?
As people. So
really? That's fascinating.
So it's like it's looking for almost like a psychological understanding.
Sure.
Of them. And I knew stories about the girls already, and I put things into play. And for an example, I had a wonderful story from one of our players about how she'd stolen some money as a kid at school. In no way did she mean to steal money. She just thought that's what you did. You found, the money was there, so you took it to school and you paid for everybody's lunch, and that's what she did. And of course, now she's my rogue. I mean, it was pretty simple that she was going to have to play a character that was not only like a golden heart, but also doesn't understand that somebody else owns these things.
Chaotic good.
Absolutely. And has remained in that style the whole time. And it came down to, I asked questions about what sort of things annoy you about other people. Nice. So every time I want an NPC to be annoying, I look back at the list and go, all right, this one, does that thing where they suck through their teeth.
That's really clever. That's really clever.
They can be really nasty a really nice style NPC, but I'll do the nasty stuff in the background. And now they've got 2 readings of this character. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because you told me you hated that. So, yeah.
That's really clever. And I think that's great advice for DMs out there that are particularly engaging with a new group or a group that haven't played D&D before. Yeah, that's really, really clever. I never thought about getting, aspects of their personality from real life and then being like, okay, that annoys you. I'll keep that for
my favorite one, I think, was asking them the sort of people they'd be attracted to. It wasn't really about making it a gender-based thing. It was like, what attracts you about this style of person, that sort of person. And then absolutely the first time, and I didn't, it was years later, but I had this hot vampire turn up. And I just, for whatever reason, just decided to almost entirely base it on one of the girls. Things they liked. And I didn't think it'd have the impact it did. But she was, I thought she's going to go, I'm just going to be very careful here. But she was like, oh no, I'm going with her. She's awesome. I'm going with her. I am sold. I was like, damn, she really believed what she wrote. She
really meant it. Yeah.
So I'll give you another one. I also asked them what sort of things they'd like to solve in the world, and it's very similar to your session 0 of what you do want to see and what you don't want to see. So when they said they wanted to remove certain elements of poverty in our world, I thought, well, then that might be something I can play on.
Yeah.
Or and some people go the other way. What sort of things don't you want to talk about? It's not that necessary to say you don't want to talk about those things if you do know what they do want to talk about.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I'm going down that path because it's going to make you feel heroic when you save those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is always super important. And actually that kind of brings me on to a question that I had about kind of how, as a DM, because this is, I think, is always worth getting people's perspectives on. Do you ensure kind of that it's, especially for new players, kind of a comfortable and inclusive environment during kind of recording sessions? Because obviously you have you'd worked with the rest of the cast for a period of years beforehand. So I was just wondering, kind of from a producer and sort of DM perspective, how you ensure that things remain fun and heroic and comfortable.
It's interesting you use that word producer. Like, in some way, you've got to keep in the back of your mind that what you are creating something, and that product that you're going for is not going to happen unless everyone's on board and looking in the same direction and working together. And having worked as a team for a while and been through some difficult situations and come through them, we started with something that a lot of groups may not have straight away, which is that trust factor.
Cool.
I think everyone knew that if I threw them into a situation, it wasn't going to be just because it was fun to cause them grief. It was going to be because I want to see how the hell you get out of it. I want to see the solution. So that trust factor is probably the most important facet. The other part was, I think, it's not a bad idea, but we have a veto, and the veto is at any stage if you go, no, I'm sorry, I crossed the line. I didn't.
Oh wow.
I didn't hear it the way I thought it was going to be said. And
right.
We don't veto much.
Sure.
I think it's been used twice in 30 episodes.
Yeah.
But it could be something as simple as, oh God, that could be taken a second way.
In terms of, so the veto in terms of like cut that out of the episode, or in
but it could be, it's usually no more than a sentence or two, but it's like, sure. oh wait, that sentence. And I can give you an example of the one that I vetoed without crossing too many lines, but there's an old story about saving a dam by putting your finger in the hole.
Yes, I know it.
It's a sentence that you can say, which in my mind was the childhood memory of, I know that fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I said the sentence out loud and went, oh no, that doesn't mean what it.
No, it doesn't mean the same thing anymore.
Doesn't mean it. And some groups might go, just leave it in, you're fine. I was like, no, I didn't intend to create a fence. I'm not going to be proud of a fence that I've created.
Of course. Yeah.
And who should be? I guess there are people out there who are proud of their offence in the first place. We say enough risky things as it is.
Yeah.
We say all sorts of things. But if you say something, you're like, oh, that doesn't represent my way of thinking.
Exactly. 100%.
Then you've got to have the trust to say to someone, do you mind if we don't put that in? Or it could be something like a personal sentence where you suddenly say, oh, wait, I just told that story, didn't I? And I didn't put 3 people who clearly know that story. So having the safety to go, can we just pick up from one sentence ago? And we don't, we're very lucky in the way that we play. Somehow we don't ever need to. We've only had one situation ever where I forgot to press record. And so we had to do something. And I was like, look, give me half an hour and I'll rewrite it.
Yeah.
I'm going to just redo it. You need to have that freshness when you.
Of course. Yeah. I think to retread, it's fine. I mean, we've done the same. We've either in some of the shows that we do kind of as bonus content, we have covered stuff that is spoilery, or we'll like you say,
that's hard to do.
We'll have so we'll have to kind of, in terms of that, we'll have to be like, shouldn't have said that, let's pick that up and it's hard. It's fine for like a couple of sentences, but if you're doing an entire repeat of the same game, I mean, we've lost audio in the past, where like one person, because we used to record separately, one person's lost audio and has had to use the echo from somebody else's headphones to replicate what they said, and it's so difficult to kind of maintain that spontaneity. So I think rewriting it and re-recording on your end is the best strategy. I think that keeps that freshness, like you say. But we've totally made jokes and said things that are too much even for us to put out into the world.
Yeah, I'm nearly 50, and you've been around this long. You're going to say something that wasn't meant to be said the way you said it, or that you've grown from. I'm very fortunate we didn't come through that internet period where you put everything out there so people can't go back. You horrible human being, you said this, because I'm not that horrible human being that you can grow through.
Yeah.
Fortunately, when you're a kid, I mean, I lived in this country in the 70s. Good luck not being horrible. It was a terrible time for people who wanted social justice.
Yeah.
It wasn't happening. And it's something that I've grown into where I'm like, I really want to be useful to my world in some way. And to get there, I've been, I couldn't have got there if people were able to look back into my diaries or whatever and go, but wait a minute, you were this person.
Yeah, you said this thing 15 years ago. And I think that's the difference between as well having a home game and where everybody's on the same page and stuff, and making a show, right? Because you're putting out a representation of yourself to the world. I think that kind of nicely segues into a question that we ask quite a lot of our contributors on Roll Britannia Parley is about inclusivity in D&D. What's your opinion of the current state of inclusivity in D&D? Do you feel like it's trending towards better? Are there things that you would like to see more of in terms of inclusivity and engaging a wider community?
Based on what D&D was, when I grew up, where it was a bunch of young teenage boys, very Stranger Things, it really was that sort of stuff. And this is, as I said before, about the things that I think you can look back and go, have we, what things would get cancelled on? Young teenage boys sitting in a room aren't always saying things that are representative of anything that they would like to be represented as later in their lives. But that's the world you're in. Knowing that the game is moving away from that is good. It's a good thing. I know there are people out there who go, no, how can you possibly play D&D unless the orcs are evil? I'm like, well, because everyone has to be this or everyone has to be that. I don't live on that planet. I want my stories to be able to replicate the real world, because then they're more intense for me. I know that when I watch Lord of the Rings, though, of course I want all the orcs to be crazy and bad. But it's a superficial 2-hour show, 2.5 hours, because you should only ever watch the extended editions. If you're watching these, but if you're watching these, sitting down and watching it, I get that there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so they, you watch Disney villains from the past when they had to have curly mustaches and turn them at the edge because we didn't have time to know they were the bad guy.
Yeah.
We needed to know as fast as possible. I have time. And the real world that I get to talk about is going to have people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And the idea that your background has to be locked in is insane to me. If that costs me people listening,
so be it. Yeah,
price to pay. I'm like, see, it's doors open. But it's better for storytelling because
I totally agree.
I can totally play on the idea that, you think this character is going to be this way. So we had an orc detective.
Nice.
Because even if orcs were just Lord of the Rings style, surely at some stage somebody would do something and somebody else would try and figure out what it was. So a great detective, but this was an orc detective who'd been shunned by his family for following an unusual path of life. And I went,
nice.
That's a fun story.
Absolutely. And nuanced as well.
Yeah.
And nuanced, and it adds, like you say, like within a film or, I mean, mind you, obviously Lord of the Rings was written in the 1940s. So, so, there's a certain level of nuance to it, but there are obviously values and stuff that have since kind of progressed. But especially within the films, like you have to have that signifier, like you said with Disney, of cartoonish villains, and I think those cartoonish villains are fun to play and represent in terms of their personality. But like, I totally agree with this idea of background doesn't define who you are, and It shouldn't define who you are, and it's really interesting to see that you've been able to not only sort of incorporate nuance, but also play on the idea of, like you say, classic setting and
Yeah,
put a
and
twist on it.
my story building comes from the old Star Treks, which of course they're going to be just as flawed as everything else. I don't want a perfect show because I won't enjoy it. I need flaws. I want to see, and occasionally you're going to get a perfect episode, and you go, damn, when it comes together, it comes together. But when it doesn't come together, you go, oh yeah, I mean, it still makes me think about things. But in that, one of the things I always kind of had a bit of an issue with in Star Trek is, in a world that was supposed to be getting better, we still had some strange problems. Now they're good for storytelling, but I was like, oh man, I'd like to believe that we actually solved that problem. So in my world, I did think early on, I will have characters' sexualities and so forth to be a component of the story, but I didn't want to do, I didn't want to do something that alienated directly any group. And we kind of ended up doing it a little bit anyway, I guess, because we decided to have polyamory as part of our world, and something that had been banned.
Okay. Yeah.
And have people nonetheless still
engaged.
That.
Yeah.
And it's as far as inclusivity goes, it was not directly we're going to do that. It was for storytelling reasons. I wanted to be able to have numerous characters involved in people's lives, not just this is your usual. Here's a bunch of orphans, and we don't know where mum and dad are, and it's oh look, you turned into Batman. It was like no, okay. Not only are you not an orphan, you got two dads, one mum, and there was a questionable character in the background we're not sure about, and everyone's like always going, well, what's going on here? And I go, hopefully, good storytelling with every single person you can have.
Absolutely, and I think the inclusive, because it's a fantasy world, right? You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, and you're making it up. You're literally making it up as you go along. So so I think the freedom to do that is really, really important. I think that kind of
as far as a saying, we go as far as not saying what some characters' backgrounds are, but I know what they are.
Yeah.
For me, that's because in this world, that aspect of that character has nothing to do with the story. But I would also say, but I do. I've talked to different people about how to describe some of our characters, where I wanted to be able to say enough information that people paying attention would go,
right.
I know something about that character, but without me ever saying, here's the label for the person. Because in this world, hopefully, they've been able to move beyond the label and become free in themselves, which again leads me back to more human condition stories that I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Where I can go, okay, it's still about love though.
Yeah. 100%.
It's just the two people involved or three people involved or anything like that.
Yeah.
One
of whom happens to be a dragon. One of them,
I haven't quite got to the path yet, but yeah.
So I wanted to also talk about, because obviously you've mentioned Patreon community and stuff like that. What yes. I wonder if you can expand for me and talk a bit more about fostering a community like the one you've built on Patreon, and if there are any memorable fan interactions that have stuck with you since the show began.
We are fortunate enough that one of the key components of our show are voiceovers by fans. Did you get that noise through just in? I don't know if you got a bit of a glitch on. I'll start again.
Yeah, go on.
Just in case.
We
are fortunate enough that we have components of our story that is actually told by fans. They're little voiceovers. I use them a little bit like the fluff you'd have in your D&D game, and you'd be you're in a new town, so something gets read out to the players. Early on, I wanted to try something different with that, and it gave me an opportunity to go and grab a whole bunch of sound effects and really create that ambience that I really wanted. So the first few episodes, of course, they're just family and friends. But after we got out there, after that first initial throwing of shows, where I thought absolutely no one would ever hear us, I absolutely believe that. I say to people all the time, on the first day we had 3 listeners and there were 4 of us, so I knew somebody let us down. Not only that, those 3 listens were across 6 episodes. So 6 episodes. And I thought, that's okay, no big deal. And because my purpose was to make it for my son, I didn't care.
Sure.
And so that whole initial thing that everyone else is out there worried about is like building an audience. I didn't. And I wasn't worried about it. And then I think we got an offer to do a Facebook ad, and it was cheap, like $20.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, we'll do that. And the next day I went, oh, look at that. Yeah, our numbers were so low, it actually jumped up.
Oh, wow.
And when we got to 700 downloads for an episode or something really, initial, I was like, that's wonderful, that's amazing. And we threw out this thing where we said, hey, if you are listening, 700 of you, and you'd like to do one of the voices, hit me up.
Yeah,
And
that's really cool.
then my inbox just went, I'd like to do that. Can I do that? Can I do that? And so I just started. The first thing I did was go, well, this is not going to last for long. So I sent scripts out to everybody, and I wrote things. By the time this happened, we were about in our 9th episode. So it's only 3 months after we put everything out, and we'd already started getting scripts in and people asking if they can do parts. And so I sent out so many that we actually just used one now in our 29th episode that I recorded when we were doing our 10th.
Wow.
I said, we're monthly. This is not like so. But I wrote them in a way that they could just come up.
Yeah.
And you're in a forest and it sounds like this, or there's a character. We had a 3-headed giant walk out of the bushes for seemingly no reason when I wrote it, and I had to go back afterwards and go, all right, what?
How am I going to put this guy here?
Yeah. And then it turned out to be a major storyline. Of course it did.
Brilliant.
And the major storyline that I had planned for those first 10 sessions is only now starting to weave its way back in.
Oh, right. Well, that's the nature of D&D, though, isn't it?
It is.
You present them with players with 5 things, and they'll pick the one that you found the least interesting or you hadn't really thought too much about. And now you're like, okay, cool, I've got to make all of this trait. It's like Wallace and Gromit laying the train track down while you're going, right?
And it's the NPC where you go, I don't have a name for this guy. So
what's his name? What's his birth date? What's his start time?
So we had a little session once where we joked about my dad wanting to call me. My dad used to work on the docks in Newcastle, and there are a lot of American ships in town. And just before I was born, he really, really started to like the names of Randall and Buck, or Randy Buck. And I was like, man, even if and I was like, that game you play where you're supposed to tell everyone what your porn name is by taking certain names out and go. I had one just as it was going to be my default. Like the game would have mattered in no way to me. I was just Randy Buck. I told the story at the start of one of our shows, and then of course we get to the NPC, and they're like, "What's his name?" And I'm like, deer in the headlight, the eyes are Randy Buck. And then I use that character as you would.
Yeah.
Now they hate that character, and they are hunting that character down, not directly, but if they ever find that character, things will happen. So that's what happens. Isn't it? You throw something at them, you don't know what's going to stick. It's an important part of the story.
I think it's a really, really cool way of engaging the community. We have done a bit of that with with a couple of voices, but mostly with like names and ideas for magic items and stuff like that. But I think it's a really cool way of engaging the community and allowing them to be part of your show. I noticed as well on Patreon that there's also kind of slightly different types of content.
We're not. We don't do everything we do is wrong. So if you sat down and said, "How do you make a success?" the first thing you say is, "Well, you've got to be weekly. You've got to be regular." And we went, "No, we'll do a monthly show." Because that's the only time we've got left, sadly. And the dream is, of course, to be able to make this sort of content more frequently, and we're not that far from it, to be honest. We're almost there. Again, not expected, but a monthly show. Don't do that, whatever you do, because your audience is waiting a whole month. Second, don't make your story incredibly complex. Nope, too late. Complexity everywhere. We've got people who've listened to the series 5 times because they've got a month between each. They just binge the next lot, and they're like, "Man, you laid down some serious information that we thought was throwaway." And I'm like, "Yeah, I came back to it, didn't I?" But I had a month between episodes to think how it all connects.
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to do that. The next thing is on Patreon. You're supposed to do bonus episodes, and we're kind of got one. We're halfway through it. The other thing we do is one of our players does cooking. So she's on there. Another one's doing makeup sessions. Another one's doing artworks. That just paints cool. And sits there and drinks alcohol. And they're about being connected with us as people. And the thing I really, while our story does have that audio quality about it, the best part about it for me is when I listen back to episodes, it sounds like we're playing.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want to feel like I'm playing. And and I'd
Yeah.
throw away everything else if it just felt like that's the game I wish I was playing.
Yeah.
I want, those moments that are really tense, and in my head I can hear the music, right? Like something's happening in the music. It's like ding, ding, and I'm like, what's my decision? I don't know what to do. Well, I'm going to put that into the game. But I know the reason I'm doing it is because that's how it felt when we played.
Yeah. I
So,
think it's a lot of the production aspect from what I really appreciated about your guys' show, and I know that we put a lot into our show as well, is that it feels like an extension of theatre of the mind.
right.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Yeah, and it really has that atmosphere, but at the same time, you do still feel like you're part of this session with friends, and you feel like you're playing and going on this adventure. And I think, like I say, just to reiterate, Girls Who Don't D&D has a great Patreon. They really, really good at engaging with their fan community. So any of our listeners that want to go and check them out, please do.
Yeah, good.
I wanted to talk to you just quickly about what has been the most surprising moment of your podcast journey so far.
Ooh, we just did one that was so big that people didn't think there'd be something coming straight after. And
Right.
the straight after hasn't come out yet, but the first one was like everyone. I know it went out today, and involves the theme song we have, which was just something. Again, I wanted to create that immersion at the start. So I actually found someone on Fiverr, and excuse me, found someone on Fiverr, wrote the lyrics to something really simple, and asked if they'd put it together. And it has a beautiful sound to it, and it says it's just three girls, a dragon, and a handful of dice is the lyric. And for a long time, people are like, "Where's the dragon? Where's the dragon?" And the dragon finally showed up, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's the dragon." And then something else that had been totally a throwaway, and people still aren't really exactly picking up on this. We had a character that was in a mirror, and I went with a cliche at the start with my characters not knowing anything about the world and having having amnesia, so that I could release bits of information and go, "Oh, cool. Well, you do actually know this spell. It's Featherfall. Here's how you learnt it." We could do a little background music and play the memory of it with the voiceover, and now you have that skill.
I think that's
So
really clever, by the way, for people who haven't played D&D before. I think that's a really clever way of introducing them to the game.
D&D is way too big to go, here's the player's handbook and please be ready by next week. But because we did that, the other thing I was doing was every now and then I'd put mirrors around, and I had a character in the other side of the mirror. Another cliche, of course, but how you do it is what matters.
100%.
So I had a character, looking at them and just saying, it doesn't cost you much, it doesn't cost you now. And it was a throwaway line, and it said, but you can ask about anything from your past because you have amnesia, and I'll show it to you in the mirror.
That's cool.
And
That's
they
really
kept
cool.
dipping into that. Yeah, they kept dipping into it, and at one stage they shattered some mirrors, and anyway, they're fighting an ice dragon, and I hid the fact that the ice dragon is full of mirrors. It's an ice dragon.
Yeah.
And every time they hit it, these shards would appear in front of their face and show them various memories. And then just as all they had to do, the old Rumpelstiltskin thing was say a character's name, and they would release this thing that was trapped between this dragon, and they'd survive the dragon. And I connected to all these different things, and they just went. I even had this. They've got. I love the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so I've got a little necklace that one of them wears with a fish on it called Douglas, who can translate anything. So it's the Babel fish. And I even had them. I was like, you remember that? He can translate. He knows the name. You just have to say it out loud. And they did. And in doing so, released a serial killing god inside Ice Dragon, who is now flying away to kill various members of their family.
Amazing.
And they just looked at me like, what just happened? Because it all sounded like it tied together. And I was like, yeah, it really did, didn't it?
That sounds like one of the most intensely sort of cinematic.
Yeah. And then, as I said, I know that the next episode, the things coming up are bigger.
Yeah.
But they've had the bump and gone, normally I write things, I think it's really important to do so, where you have a couple of intense bits and then a bit of comedy, and the comedy can be a load of fun to write in there, any number of things that you can make much more interesting just by going, right, let's just make this about comedy for a second. So it's you're in a battle, but this guy wants to dance because it's a battle in a ballroom or something. and all these fun things happening, and then trying to balance it between tense and relaxed and tense and comic and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's fun to do those things.
How do you kind of ensure that the narrative is engaging whilst making sure that you're continuing to move the story forward, but also leave room for these comedic sort of tangents and moments? It's a fine balance to strike, I find.
It is, and we play tomorrow, and I have a plan. I have my audio almost complete. I've got one more piece to do when we finish up.
Hmm.
And so I've got all the different pieces. I've written out the motivations of everyone involved, so that I can go, right, this makes sense that they would do this. Otherwise, in this situation, why would they not just go, let's just go out through the window because this is terrifying and I don't want to die, so I'm just going to ignore the entire section. And I've always look at the various things that are happening and say, are there options? So you've got player agency, because if you don't have that, I don't think you have that engagement you're looking at. And the number one rule for me is if I can make sure my players are interested in what they're doing, then our audience would also be interested in that. And it might not always pan out, which is why I think it's important we've got that. We sound like you're playing D&D. I think that's important because you are forgiving of that, because you know that when you play, sometimes you're like, I thought that would be the most engaging moment. And the character went, oh, okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Look at this shiny thing over here.
Yeah, we've got a character who has been brought forward in time by 400 years. Her husband and her daughter are trapped inside the heart of a mountain god that is. This is how bizarre our story is, and how complex. These things all link up, and their souls are trapped in there. And if they get released, they raise this god again. And obviously, she should be really thinking very hard about saving her husband and daughter. It comes up. Sometimes she thinks about it.
Yeah.
But there are times when she's like, I think he's cheating on me. I really think it's been a long time. I think it's moved on, And so what I thought would be really motivation and drive has become comic instead of dramatic.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's really interesting.
Go with that. So
yeah, and then to build on that and stuff like that.
I plan for like a roller coaster between comedy, drama, and if you're lucky, bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get the light and shade, right, which both improve and inform on each other. Just being aware, sort of conscious of time, we sort of started slightly later. I'm just going to ask you a quick question about sort of personal sort of D&D, and then we'll ask you about sort of future plans and stuff like that.
Cool.
What other aspects of D&D or characters are you most excited to play in the future of your adventures? What is there anything that you haven't done yet that you'd like to try out? Any settings, any kind of dynamics, or any NPCs that you're like, oh, that'd be a really cool idea, but I don't know where to fit them yet?
I have like like any DM, we have a folio of ideas and things you steal from here and steal from there, and you put them all together. NPCs are always great because, as I said, we started off with people joining me almost on my journey. So when I first thought I'm going to try a voice for an NPC, I'd never done that before. But I thought the girls are trying something brand new, so I'll try something brand new. So my first plans with any NPCs were if I'm going to do a voice, I'm going to do impersonations of famous people. And my impersonations are so bad, everyone will just think I'm doing a great voice. So we have a priest early on who was basically Sean Connery with a cold.
Nice.
And it was just because my Sean Connery sucks. So all of my NPCs are just people that I would like to try and emulate. So that gets to be pretty complex pretty quickly. Like, if I could just breed, Benedict Cumberbatch with, Anne Hathaway, what character do I end up with? And try and do those sort of things. So I think as far as who would I like to do a character of that I haven't been able to do yet, almost everyone from Parks and Recreation.
Right. Yeah, really nice.
Hide one of those in there.
And see if they spot them.
Yeah, I kind of got Ron in there as a magician, but we haven't gone back to him yet. But Ron is a divorced or magician with marriage troubles.
Oh, that's great.
Extremely powerful, but also not involved in things. And
yeah, super stern faced as well.
Yeah,
yeah. I think that's really cool. What advice would you give to, therefore, obviously having DM'd on and off, and then I'm just going to hold. There's some sort of police thing outside my window. I don't live in a great area. What advice? Being a DM, sort of on and off, and then guiding new players through a D&D campaign. What advice would you give to somebody that's new to D&D, especially if they might feel out of place in the community due to their identity?
Oh, good question. We actually get this a lot, and we have all sorts of social media that people can talk to us through. And again, not something that I really thought was going to happen, so it's always a surprise. But we have, someone said, "Why don't you have Discord?" I said, "Oh, what is it?" I'm old. I didn't know that. I'm still in that bit where I get to say things like on the YouTubes, So, but on Discord in particular, we got a lot of people who were a bit younger. I like to say we're actually aimed at an older audience, but that doesn't mean we get some young ones. And they do come in and say, "Look, I'm an introvert," or "I'm a," and the list goes on, of course. But the first one I often get is people saying, "Look, I'm quiet. I'm introverted," and my response to them always is, again, you're living in a fantasy world. You're whatever you want to be. And if that means you get to break free of that introversion for a little while, then let yourself do that. But if it also means you don't feel comfortable playing the character who's not, let yourself do that too.
Yeah.
All of it always comes back to, it does probably cause some DMs out there some grief. Like they want their world to be so tight that there's no room to budge. I don't get that. I don't even think that for D&D. Where our title is Girls Who Don't DnD, and we move towards other games so quickly sometimes. And I say that to new DMs as well. It's a rule book that clearly has a section that says do what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if that means going, one of our episodes we had the girls get tumbled down a hill by an avalanche, and I used basically played Battleship after that to see if they could dig out where the girls were. Now, there's no page for that in D&D. It's not real D&D. It's more fun. It gets people involved. We're smiling while we're doing it. We're laughing at how, I got a great question in the middle of it. Wait, real Battleship is like vertical and horizontal. Did you do diagonal? And I was just like, I'm not talking about anything, because it's, why would you don't have to make it exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so when you want to, the key thing is to make everyone that trust. I keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
And to do that, you've got to make people feel like they're included. You've got to make them feel like their ideas are valuable. And if that means breaking something like a rule or the story or something like that, I would say do it as fast as you can, because you'll have much more fun with people who suddenly, and as I said, with people who are introverted, they might suddenly feel more comfortable saying something because they know that you've got their back.
I think that's fantastic advice. And you've making people feel valued around the table is something that is clearly reflected in the community that you've built. So, I think that is brilliant advice.
Fortunate, yeah.
And if, like you said about there's people that run games where their world is so rigid and stuff, I've always felt if your world is that rigid, write a novel.
Yeah.
D&D is a kind of, I've always approached D&D from a sort of sandbox or House of Cards-y kind of thing where there's all sorts of knock-on effects if something happens, and that for me is the enjoyment of it. Just finally then, what future plans or projects can listeners look forward to from Girls Who Don't D&D? Do you have any other projects currently in the works? Are you planning live shows? What does the future hold?
It's very hard to do a live show the way we do a show, because some of our audio gets and effects and all that sort of stuff get added later on and add so much to it. But at the same time, we're planning. We basically finally agreed this week that we're going to MCM London in October.
Oh, sick!
So that'll be great. Very exciting for us, because
we were there last year.
I was kind of hoping you guys would be there this year, because I need to know what the hell to do. We've never done stuff. We're a bunch of people who are kind of, I want to say we're not from this world. We just weren't expected to be so close to the middle of it.
I think so. We're the same.
Yeah. So we're so far on the edge that we're like, you've got people who want to meet us. And when people write to us online, for example, and we write back, they sometimes get this, "Oh my God, I can't believe you replied." And I'm like, I can't believe you asked a question. I'm thrilled. So MCM for us is terrifying, because we're going over there with the assumption that no one's going to be there when we get there. We're going to sit in a room and just go, So as far as live shows go, we get asked all the time, but we're just not sure anyone else is going to be there. However, that doesn't mean we're not going to find our way into a pub sometime and just play a game. We didn't know what we might do, so it's a long time off. But we're just looking at ways where we can sit down and just do exactly what we like doing.
Yeah,
and hopefully sharing that with enough other people. So
I think what we've learned from it's really exciting to hear that you're going to be at MCM. We'll have to link up. We'll come down. What we've learned from doing a few live shows in the past year is that the time is so much shorter. It feels so much shorter, but also it's quite nice to have the live show be slightly divorced from the story. So for our last performance at MCM Birmingham in December, it was just a Christmas party.
Yeah. Okay.
So we didn't. It wasn't sort of a grand adventure and stuff like that because we only had about an hour. So we just did Christmas party stuff, and it turned out to be really, really funny.
I could put one of the things we've done a lot is have doors. They were never meant to be as important as they are, but they came out, being really critical, and they got more and more bizarre as we went along. I reckon in an hour, the girls would maybe get through a door.
Yeah,
it's brilliant because we've done it before where we played for a good chunk of our episode. It's just here's this door, wonderful doors that talk to people, and very obvious puzzles that make you go, I fucking hate you when you finally get the puzzle.
Yeah.
We had a great door that spoke in riddles, of course. He spoke in acrostic poems.
Nice.
And then we'd ask for the password. We had someone from the UK who had just that wonderful, lovely, pompous UK voice. When you're really putting it on.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right. And there were these puzzles that sounded like beautifully written poems. With puzzles. She clearly had clues inside them. They were just acrostic. Because I didn't give them to anybody.
Yeah.
You had to figure out that but the password was the acrostic part of the poem. There were 3 poems, and all of them spelled fuck off down the side. So when they finally figured out what the password was, all of them just yelled, oh, fuck off. And I think I would love to show that it was just another door.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think people would really love that. I think that'd be really funny. But excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me, for chatting to me. And please check out Girls Who Don't D&D. You can find them all across the internet. Check out their Patreon, all of their social medias, and go to MCM and see them because I would love for them to do more live shows. And I've really enjoyed chatting to you.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So when's Alex's wonderful interview?
Yeah. What point did
this
it
one
get
was an all right interview. Yeah. This wasn't.
I've just heard the adequate interview.
I thought you were wonderful, Alex. Well, at least Cory was. So half of the.
I thought Cory was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Australian bits.
Yeah.
Shane was upside down.
Yeah, the upside down.
Then again, so did quite a lot of the world.
You did a grand job, Alex. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we'll process the audio to be right side up for you.
You could flip it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it doesn't sound right, just stand on your head.
It sounds like it was very similar to us. One of the coming out of COVID,
their shell,
getting together.
Well, they started
and
before
making the
COVID,
show, same as us.
and then COVID kind of broke off, right? A little bit. That's what they said.
Did they? Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Well, either way, it's still quite a similar story. As they were quite small around the COVID time, and then from then they've grown pretty exponentially quickly, and are doing pretty well. But they still have that because of the speed that they've grown. And some people have told us that we also have done quite well, grown quite quickly. I don't think quite as quickly as they did, or have spiked straight away. But we do all right.
I can feel.
But
either way, through the mic.
I'm trying to see a sort of there's a little bit of mirror, isn't there? Yeah. Surely. I quite find. Well, either way, I think it's really nice that they're because of their fame, sudden jump. They have found the sort of level of humility still, if that's a
Humility.
word. Humility. I like humility.
I like humility.
I'm just going to go to Dictionary Caller whilst you carry on.
Dictionary Caller. Oh, that was easy for you to say. It's disappointing, isn't it, when you had...
Have you got Susie Dent on the phone? Is that what a Dictionary Caller is?
It's
either way, they've remained nice and humble, even if we haven't.
No.
Because they still have that
Maths caller is Rachel Riley. Yeah?
He was talking about when fans come up to him after shows, wasn't he? And saying that he's still... They're going, oh my God, like, you know, I messaged you and thanks for talking to me and oh my God, this is amazing. He's there going, no, oh my God, this is amazing. The fact that you want to come and talk to me and the fact that you've messaged me, this is incredible. There's that equal level of, oh my God, this is incredible that people want to talk to me and want to listen and think it's amazing. But equally, people go, oh my God, you're amazing. I want to listen. Can I talk to you? Yeah. And there's been a couple of occasions where we've had people come and say photos and things and it has felt really weird because we're like, just 5 mates that talk about a make-believe world that James made up. And yet people like us. There's 5 mates and there's one other. I'm not going to tell you which one.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm the one Paul. I don't like out of the group, don't worry.
No, that's really true. Like it is surreal and you know, they've had absolutely stonking success.
But they're still so humble.
Success, but they are incredibly. Yeah. They've got a lot of humility to them.
Their humility their humility level is very high.
Yeah, they haven't cut their
or low. Depends on how you want to measure that scale.
Yeah, that Dictionary Caller might go onto voicemail by the sounds of things. They've not come back.
That's a nice
yet.
point, though. Talking about the world that James has created. He was talking about, what made me laugh, is how often we do, and it seems they do, they go off on tangents when they play. So, James, how on earth do you deal with it when we do that? Do you have coping mechanisms?
Go off on a tangent. The whole podcast is one big tangent. You were supposed to be like setting up a bakery competition.
Wow. And then we all got knocked over the head. Well,
there was never supposed to be a piratical theme to it. It just we happened to be.
It was pure business.
It was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was Suits, but in D&D.
It's just got out of hand. Luckily, we recorded the whole thing.
Yeah. At some point, you're going to get hired as lawyers, even though you haven't got the qualifications, and you've never passed the bar. That's just what's going to happen. No.
We pass the bar frequently. We just stop at it. That's the problem.
Yeah, so what we keep making it lower and lower and lower and lower. That's why.
But yeah, to tangent back to the pre-tangent question. To re-tangent back onto the tangent. Cory has sort of said that he plans 5 things and his players always choose the one he hasn't really prepared. I long ago have moved past the stage of planning 5 things because you'll go for the one I've prepared least for. I now don't plan a thing. I just create things around where you're going to be, and narrative occurs.
I suppose do you think that's come from experience though? Like when you first started in a similar way to like the stage that they're like Cory's at, did you used to plan 5 things?
Oh yeah, no, I planned more than 5 things. I planned loads. Our first arc, I have basically written out word for word every possible everything you could do.
How quickly did you find it drop down, like between each arc?
Fairly quickly. The first arc wasn't too bad because you lot didn't really know anything you were going to do. So I held your hands through quite a lot of it.
We were quite tame, I suppose.
Yeah. I think by arc 2, you immediately started just going off on tangents, which is how we ended up with a cranberry farm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at that point, I realised this is getting out of hand. So then I moved on to I'll plan a few things, and then maybe I'll fill in some gaps around it. And I've now moved on to, I'm just going to plan things that are going on.
Right.
And I'm going to give you a goal, and
what you do
then I'll have to riff the rest of it.
Yeah. So it sounds like Cory's at arc 3 stage of, he's got a few things planned.
I have an arsenal of NPCs and things that will happen. And when they happen or where they happen is largely up to you fools.
Well, I think enjoy what Cory said about
Does that make his players nicer than us?
Yeah, possibly because they steer sort of into the skid. You set the car going and get out of the car.
Well, I think that would mean that
and then go to the bar
later on in a
different county.
That sounds like me.
Alex, I reckon in a year's time, or Tom, if you do another interview and just see if Cory's got past Arc 3 stage and has moved on to the Arc 4 stage of just have an arsenal at your weaponry and just get ready to see what happens. Because it seems like there was that similarity of planned a few things at around about the Arc 3 level for you, James, that Cory's at now with his 5 things.
Yeah. It was about that sort of stage, yeah. It gradually, my notes have gone from pages and pages of stuff to incoherent, here's a thing, when I need it, I'm going to get this thing and use it. I don't know when this will be because I don't know what you're going to do.
Nice.
Sounds like the art of freestyling whilst herding cats at the same time.
Yeah.
It's herding cats. It's herding a herd of black cats at night in a power cut.
Yeah,
Whilst wearing goggles.
whilst wearing blacked out goggles on LSD. That's what the whole show has become.
And being told to tell a coherent story.
Yeah.
Yes.
That needs
And
to
the
be on the
cats are
website
on LSD
somewhere.
as well.
Can we put that on the website? Just that line. Everything you just said.
If
Straight
somebody
under
can leave
Roll
us a
Britannia.
5-star review with that as the description, that would be fantastic.
Honestly, as long as it's a 5-star review, you can write what you like.
That's no.
As long
No,
as
I'll
it's
take the
Don't
5
tell
stars.
them to do that. Don't tell the internet that.
I'll take the 5 stars. They're more helpful.
To be clear, all these cats are entirely fictional cats, and in no way should you give real cats LSD.
No.
Oh, I thought you were. Right, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, both.
You've both shared. They've got catnip. You've got
Yeah.
LSD. There we go. Everyone's happy.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Dodge that.
Got out of that
Imaginary.
Oh,
bullet.
James is sweating. That could just be the LSD, though.
To be fair, that does raise another point of that they brought up, that Cory brought up, which is the power of veto.
Yeah.
Yes, really
Yes.
cool. Yeah.
Like that a
We-
lot.
Which I like that they have sort of an official system for that. In
Yeah,
their
we just
show.
go.
We just collectively have this sort of sense of going, and there's the line.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was too
when
far.
we record, and we all know that was funny, but also no.
There's the line. And
That's
there's
funny
me
because we know you're
stepping
joking.
over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
because we know we don't mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this
We
is
know
exactly what you
It'll
said.
never
the
make
depths
it
of
into the
ourselves.
show.
This is exactly what he said about kind of like, yeah, with the veto thing, and it could just be like a case of a sentence or, something that you're like amongst friends, yeah, but you don't want to be perceived like that in the world, or it doesn't really represent who you are in the world, or it could be taken a certain way. I mean, his example was like, what do you call it, a double entendre that could be taken in a different way. And so, yeah, it's funny to me that they have like a specific term for it, whereas we're like, it's on the look
Just
on our
not that.
faces. Yeah.
We all have quite a nice sense for no, that was the
That's
line
too far.
right there.
And it
Nothing
doesn't
is
happen
followed by a,
super often.
We are.
Noise.
No, but occasionally we say a thing because it's funny in the moment, and we all look around
Yeah,
and
you're
go, "That was
giddy.
funny," but no.
Yeah. You get caught up in that little moment and end up saying something, and you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." But we're all quite
And
decent.
sometimes we say a
blokes,
thing because we haven't
so-
thought the thing all the way through
Yeah.
to the words.
Yeah.
So we say a
100%.
thing because in our heads it sounded funny, and then we hear them out loud and we go, "Oh yeah, no, that actually means something
yeah,
else."
there's a connotation as to what I've just said,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
that I didn't intend.
I didn't think about that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But we're all
But,
quite decent blokes, like I say. So that,
Yeah.
we all have that group mentality of, not right. Let's just move on.
No.
Yeah, as soon as the
It's
laugh
quite
dies
nice.
down, you
Yeah.
think about it and you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, not that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are actually going
It's
to cut
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one
good.
because it's the argument they have about certain comedians can get away with saying certain things because it's the environment you're in. You go to a Jimmy Carr show, for example, you're going to hear things that are likely to offend.
Yeah.
But he can get away with that sort of thing because you've paid to go and see a comedian that often says quite edgy things.
Built most of his career around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why shows like that don't necessarily work on Netflix because those shows suddenly just appearing in your living room
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like
is
consent.
not for
and
everyone.
that's why
Yeah.
things that you might say in a group of friends around a table might be have a different vibe to them to if you put them into your listeners' ears. Because it's a different thing. I'm not saying we don't say offensive jokes, but it's sometimes things could be taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Is the thing. And that's the clarity I'd like to just say is that we don't say offensive
Yeah.
things. We do just say things that sometimes you go, if that was clipped out of context,
Well, this is exactly it. If you're being recorded, then as a like you say, out of context and as a soundbite, there's certain stuff that doesn't represent who we are or represent the show or the kind of community we have.
Yeah, it's the thing is what we said isn't what is, but if you took a specific sentence in isolation. Without the other words around it, because you can clip it, and I think that's why we're quite protective of the things we say.
Yeah, but that's why it's really nice that they, as a community, have their own way of going. They equally know that they need to protect themselves, but don't also want to cause accidental offence. So they have five minds that have a way of going. Let's just veto that.
I think that ties in nicely with the point that Cory was making about because I referred to him as a producer essentially, which is what we all are, and the fact that we all have to wear these hats of like not only sitting around joking with your mates and having fun, but you are making a show that is entertaining and not offensive. And my dog is having a dream where he's humping.
He's just really likes
welcome to my world, Alex. Right?
Yeah. A big stretch. So you're wearing many different hats of like. Trying to be an entertainer, but also sitting around joking with your mates, and also making sure that you're making a show that people are going to enjoy and isn't going to upset anybody. And so, it's really nice to have that opportunity to go scrub that. Didn't mean it in that way. Now that I hear how it sounds, and be able to move on. And I think they've obviously got, like you said, like a system in place that allows them to do that. But I'm glad to know that we're not the only ones that kind of feel that weird pressure of like, of having fun and being sort of in the spur of the moment, but also realizing for posterity that there is a recording of this thing, Yeah.
And to a certain degree, we are, for want of a better phrasing, role models, and because there are people that listen to us, and in the same way that
role model.
No, but in the same way that they are role models for their, the genders on the D&D community, as well as people in the TTRPG community in general, because that's what you end up getting put in a pedestal when people start listening to you as frequently as they found in their success. So
I also I'm very aware that people tune into our show as one, a form of escapism, and two, just to have a laugh for an hour a week. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't want anybody to turn on the show and go, "Oh, that was
didn't enjoy that
suspect." Yeah, didn't enjoy that. That made me feel really bad, actually.
Which
can happen by accident.
Yeah, I think it's really nice that apart from the fact that they've got this really nice system where they sort of collectively can say, "Actually, can we not put that in?" I feel like it's really nice that we as a group are in a position where we all collectively go instinctively without thinking about it, just go, not that.
Yeah.
We know where the line is. We know where the line is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why we like a system of auditing it. We just go, do you know what? That doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, sometimes there's jokes cut out that aren't because they're offensive. It's just because they didn't land.
There is some too.
Sometimes jokes just
or it's a repeat.
didn't land and they don't make it in.
Yeah.
When we used to record like this, if
or lag,
lag, then you'd say something that someone else has just said, and you go, "Oh, well, let's just get rid of that."
Yeah.
So, what did you take away from it, Paul? What stuck with you from Alex's chat with Cory?
I think the way he used the surveys before they started.
Oh yeah.
He asked all those lovely questions about childhood memory, what annoys them about people, and he just shoved all that stuff right in there to the NPCs. Used it against them.
I like that he.
Great.
I like that he did it.
Coincidentally, I've got all these surveys that
I will happily answer one. I think that's a really cool way of getting to know your group and like including stuff. And like he said, like playing on those elements of annoyance or trust or
real
whatever.
life things that you
Sounded like a Mad Lib for creating a backstory to me, which sounded really useful.
Well, the thing, like he, what I found interesting about it is that obviously with the Sessions era and stuff, you can do that, and often it's done for the character, but he did it for them as players, and then threw it back in their face, which is great.
Yeah.
So you three didn't have to submit a resume before starting this because James asked me to do it. I had to interview.
I got my position.
He did
based on.
I did his bank account number and sort code as well.
Oh, I just did photos.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where's that Where's that veto button that we were just talking about?
Shush, Chip, we weren't supposed to talk about that.
Sorry.
We agreed.
Sorry.
What
Shall
a
I put my
lovely
clothes
end.
back on now? Or?
What a lovely end. And that's
Just the top half.
And that's what she said. No, we can't say that. There's the veto button.
What a lovely end.
So,
That's what she said.
gentlemen, I think we'll end it there before it does go south.
I can't. I didn't know.
No.
So, gentlemen, thank
Bye.
you very much for being here.
I'll thank bye.
I'd like to thank Cory for taking the time to talk to Alex, and
Yes.
thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you so
listening.
much.
Yeah.
You're a
And
Thanks,
for all of
fantastic
your
bloke.
ongoing
Thank you.
support.
And thank you to you.
And I hope we get to link up soon.
Yes.
And do something, hopefully in person, if you're ever on this tiny little island that we call the United Kingdom
Would like a part 2.
of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
So, thanks, Alex. It's goodbye
Geography
from
lesson.
me.
That's the educational bit. There you go.
There you go, educational bit done. It's goodbye from all of them.
Bye.
Bye. Now, look out for the next episode of Parley, but if you simply can't wait to hear more from the crew of Roll Britannia, then you can find us on all good podcatchers out there. YouTube, Amazon, Podchaser, Spotify, you name it. But we have new episodes coming out every single Wednesday. There are over 200 episodes in the series so far, so there's plenty for you to listen to. Not only that, but you can check out our Patreon, our merch store, and even drop into our very active Discord server. All the links are in the episode description.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, it's James, the Judge Master of the podcast, what you're listening to. Anyway, we're going to be live at MCM Comic Con London this October from the 25th to the 27th. We've got a creator stand in the Creator Pavilion where you can meet the crew and you can get your hands on some exclusive booty, including our gold-ish inspiration tokens. And we're also going to be live performing an exclusive one-shot performance on the creator stage on Saturday the 26th at MCM Comic Con London from 3:35 until 5 p.m. So, really important, get yourself some tickets if you haven't done already. It's at the Excel Centre in London. I'm sure you're going to have an amazing time when you're there. And there's going to be a very special announcement. Yeah. So, make sure you get your tickets and come and see Roll Britannia at MCM Comic Con London.